Hello. So, great. We're talking about some notes today. I'd like you to write these down, turn these in, use them to help you with the assignment today. Um, so, we're going to go through some stuff that we already are familiar with, which is mean, median, and mode. Mean, median, mode. Oops, that came out wrong. M-O-D-E. That should be a dash. And range. So, let's first talk about this. So, I think the hardest part about the mean, median, mode, and range is to remember what each of the words mean. You've seen this before, but just to review, mean is the average. So that means we're going to add up all of the data and divide by how many pieces of data. Now, all of these are ways to represent data and to give you a sense of what you're looking at. Whether it's house values, whether it's number of children, whether it's income. So these are just ways to represent a bunch of data and to be able to see what it means, and then compare them to the average, compare them to each other. So we can look at a piece of data and say, how does this compare to the rest of the whole set of data, looking at it as a whole? So mean is average, and the way we do average is we add, I'll do this underneath it, add all data and divide. By how many? Median, now median is what it sounds like when we're driving down this Jamaica. You know, the median is the middle, it's that part of the road where it separates the two sides, so it's right in the middle. And the median, when you're driving, it's got grass on it or a tree on it or whatever. And in math, median has the same representation. It's the middle. The key piece with median is we have to put data in order from either smallest to biggest or biggest to smallest before we find that median. So make sure that the data is in order from smallest to biggest or biggest to smallest, and then we're looking for the middle number. Now, if there's an odd set of data, it's very simple. You just cross off from both sides and you'll find that one middle number. If there's an even number of pieces of data, when you break it down, you'll get down to two numbers, and we'll need to take the average of those two numbers. So if the two numbers are 10 and 5, you'd add up 10 plus 5, get 15, divide that by 2, and the mid, or the median, would be 7.5. Now, mode is the most. It is the number that occurs the most. Now, this has got a little specialness to it. So mode is unlike median, mean, or range. There may be multiple modes. There may be more than one mode. So mode could have two answers. There could be two numbers that occur the same number of times, and they would be both of them at the same time would be the mode. Mode there could also be no mode. There might be a possibility that every single number is unique and there are no repeats. And if that's the case, then we say that there is no mode. So just be aware that mode could have multiple answers or may have no answer. It could have one answer, but just be aware that it's a little different than the other ones. And range is the difference between the biggest and smallest. So you take if you already put your data in order from small to big, take the first number, which is either the small or the big, and you take it away from the other extreme, the other end. And this will be a value. So you're basically saying that my data there's this much between the biggest and the smallest number. It'll always be positive, so don't think of it as if you do it and get a negative, just make it positive. It's a value, a positive value. Okay, so we'll do some practice on the assignment. When we look at the assignment a little bit later, we'll go practice these things, but we've done these before. You've seen this before. You've seen average, you've seen median, you've seen mode, and you've seen range. This brings us to another concept. It's called standard deviation. Now, I'm not going to make you find standard deviation, but I do want you to understand what standard deviation is so that if you're presented with it, you'll know what it means. standard deviation just tells us a little bit about the data and how it relates to the mean, the middle. And what I implying by this is that once you have found this average, how far away you are from that average tells us a little bit about the piece of data we're looking at. So if I know that the average household has 2 pets, for instance, whether it's a cat and a dog, if it has 2 pets, and then I look at somebody who maybe has 10 pets, that doesn't really tell me anything if a lot of people have 10 pets. But if I know what the standard deviation is, and that tells me that from the average, if I call this the average, how far away plus 1 standard deviation and minus 1 standard deviation, how far away, if I took the standard deviation and I added it to the average and I subtracted from the average and I have that range of values here, this tells me that about 68% of all data should lie within 1 standard deviation. So if I know my standard deviation is 1.2, and I said I had 2, the average number of pets is 2, and I said someone has 10 pets, well, if I added 1.2 to 2, that gives me 3.2. So I would say, well, and then I subtract 1.2 and it gives me 0.8. I would say, 68% of all people who have pets fall within this range. I would be like, oh, geez, this person's got 10. They are a cat lady, they are kind of strange. So I could tell how strange they were by saying how many standard deviations they are away. And so if I did this a second time, this would now tell me about 95% of the data. So 95% of the data is within 2 standard deviations, and it just gets greater and greater as you add a standard deviation of how much of the data we're talking about. Scientists and physicists use this when they're studying things. They compare it to the standard deviation, and they know if things fall outside of a certain number of standard deviation, that this is an anomaly, something crazy is happening, and they really need to spend some time on it. So this is what standard deviation. There is a long formula for it. It looks really complicated, but just know what standard deviation is. In the questions today, I'm not going to ask you anything about standard deviation. We'll just be dealing with mean, median, and mode. But do know what standard deviation is and how it lets me relate my data to the average. Now, let's look at box and whisker. So a box and whisker plot is a way for me to represent data as a picture. So it would let me look at a group, a set of data, and represent what's happening with that set of data with a picture. This is kind of nice. And so a normal box and whisker looks like this. It's on a number line. There are 5 critical points on the number line. And these 5 points have significance. And I'm going to tell you what they are, and you're going to see how we create a box and whisker. It's not very difficult. So let's talk about this. This is the lowest value. So when we look at our data and we put it from smallest to biggest, this is the smallest. Then we have this point right here, which is the largest. So this right here is where we put the biggest number. So we have the smallest number here. We have the biggest number here. And then this value right here is the median. So it's really critical. Is the first thing we do with our data is we put it. So the first thing we do is we're going to put it in order. After we put it in order, we are going to graph the smallest point, and largest point. So we're going to, first thing we're going to do is we're going to graph this number here and this number here. The third thing we're going to do is we're going to find and graph the median. So we're going to find and graph this median right here. So we start this box and whisker by plotting these 3 points. So we put our data in order. We've graphed the smallest point. We've graphed the largest point. We then find the median and we graph that median point as well. Now, I want you to imagine what's happening. I've got this long set of data. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I've graphed this smallest point and the largest point. I found my median and I've graphed that median as well. Okay? Now what I want you to think about is we are going to find the median of each median. So I'm going to find the middle between this group and the middle between this group. So we're going to find the median of the medians. Find and graph the median of the medians. So I'm going to find this median. So again, I'm going to start here and here. I'm going to boom, boom, boom. I'm going to find this point is right. You can see it's going to be right here in between the 4. I cross off. This is the median. This becomes 2.5. And I'll do the same thing over here. Boom, boom. This becomes my median, and my median, this 7.5, right in between that 7 and 8. And so I found those next two, and I found and graphed those, and that gives me this point right here and this point right here. Now, we've done all the plotting we need to do. We just need to make the box and whisker part of this now. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the box. We're going to take the median of the median, median of the median, and we're going to connect those to make the box. We're going to draw this line in here of the median, and then we're just going to shade to the smallest, shade to the biggest, and that is our box and whisker. Now, why do we do the box and whisker? Well, it gives me an idea of percentagely where my data falls. I have the upper quartile, quartile means quarter, so this is the top quarter. So I can know that if my data falls inside of this range here, if it's 7, if it's 8 or 9, I'd be like, you know, it's somewhere in here. I go, oh wow, this is the top 25%. I've got this middle right here. I got the upper quartile. Then I have this what's called the middle quartile, middle. This is the middle 50%. So it's middle quartiles. That's the middle 50%, so that's about, you know, where most of them are. And then I have the lower quartile. And that's where the bottom 25% fall. So this lets me take a piece of data and immediately look where it falls into this box and whisker and know that if it's in the upper quartile, it's in this middle quartiles, or it's in the lower quartile. It gives me some sense of where it falls and how it relates to other data inside of the set. Okay, well, I think this covers what we need to. Make sure your notes are taken. Make sure you have them and use them when you're doing this assignment. Good luck. Have a great day, and stop in and see me if you need some help.